They hate us because they're sociopaths and they're dysfunctional. So we must get away from this idea that they're stupid, they don't understand what they're doing, or they don't understand pensions, they don't understand the implications of taxation. No, no, it's quite deliberate, and no opposition political parties at the moment are actually beginning to believing the fact that this is deliberate. They think they're incompetent, or they're stupid, or they're economically illiterate. They're not. Now, what people watching this clip need to do is to let that sink in. Let that sink in. They hate your guts and they want to steal all the money that you've got. Well, greetings, everybody. By virtually public demand, I've got Nick Ward back on again because we've been talking about so many things and we've often had to be slightly cut off because of just time constraints. But one thing that's big now, and it was big on the last time that we met, is pensions, tax raids, so on and so forth. And both Nick and I have been doing some homework on this. And of course, at the moment, it must be by nature speculation before the budget. But generally speaking, we're going to be pretty well close. And if we're not close this time, we'll be close next time. So if if your pension interests, whatever they may be, futuristic, the middle run, or you're already in that space, we'll cover a bit of that. And as everybody knows on my channel, certainly, I spent 40 years in the pension fund industry. 50 years in the city, in point of fact, but actually 40 of those were very, very directly linked with pensions. And I was with Mercury Asset Management. For those of you who don't know, and probably that's everybody, I was managing pension funds, fixed interest, bits of pension funds with Mercury Asset Management, which was at the time the biggest pension fund manager in Europe, by quite a long way, in point of fact. I was also the liaison officer with Mercury for the National Association of Pension Funds. I was a joint liaison officer. There was another man with me, a colleague with me. So I'm steeped in pensions, pension investment, and pension law, although I'm a little bit rusty, but I'm not that rusty. But I know who isn't rusty, and that's Nick, because he's burnt the midnight oil on it. And I'll hand over to him, and then we'll have a little bit of a discussion, which I think people might find interesting from both our perspectives. So without further ado, as they say, Nick, the floor is yours. What's going on?
Well, thanks very much again, Godfrey. Good to be back. What's going on? Yeah, what a mess. It's scaring the living daylights out of me, to be honest with you. I don't know how much they're going to go forward with. Hopefully not everything that's been proposed by these left-wing think tanks, but yeah, it's scary. So look, I wanted to start, Godfrey, with one crucial update actually from the budget that everyone's been talking about in the last couple of days. And I think it's really going to reshape the future of pensions in the UK if it does go ahead. So Reeves is basically proposing a stealth tax on private sector pensions, which basically aims to raise about 2 billion a year by cutting back on how much you can contribute tax-free. But here's the kicker, Godfrey. Public sector workers, so teachers, MPs, civil servants, they're not going to be affected at all. I think that raises some pretty serious questions about favoritism, to say the least. But just to break down what it basically means, currently, when you pay into your pension, that money is tax-free. So if you put in 10,000 on a 50,000 salary, you don't pay tax on that amount. You only pay tax when you withdraw it in the future, usually at a lower rate. So it works out quite nicely in your pension where you probably don't need as much money. But under Reeves's new plans, the government wants to cap how much you can put in tax-free to just £2,000. Any more than that, you pay national insurance straight away from the bat. So you're effectively being double taxed. On top of that, they're also proposing to apply the national insurance on employer pension contributions too. So yet another hit for business, which is obviously going to affect hiring to an extent yet again. And when you look at the average contributions that people are making, and look, particularly six-figure earners, we'll just take the top for now, they're due to lose out about £50,000 from their pension pots on this. So Godfrey, it just seems so short-sighted as it's hitting the very people who need to be saving more, especially with our population. Obviously, it's aging, retirement savings already, well, they're dangerously insufficient. So I just cannot understand the thinking behind it. Where's the logic coming from? Look, less money flowing into pensions, slower growth in retirement funds, inevitably more of a burden falling on the state and taxpayers in the long term. So what they're doing is they're just kicking the can down the road as their back's against the wall. They're obsessed with this short-term growth. But the very fact that it's leaving public sector pensions, which are gilded, untouched, is just adding insult to injury. It's the cherry on top of the cake. Why should those in the private sector, why should MPs and civil servants keep their generous benefits? Doesn't touch them at all. It's just another example of political favoritism that's been racking up for years now. This has been going on for decades. But this really is blatant. It just seems like more of a, it seems more politically motivated than anything else. So it worries me because it's really going to discourage people from putting any more money into their pensions. It's the one tax break that people currently have at the moment, and they're coming down on that as well. It's structurally, this is going to be a disaster in the long term. No one's going to want to put their money in a pension. They're just going to say, look, a bird in the hand is better than two in the bush. It's going to be a disincentive. And I think, Godfrey, that's what's really important here as well, just getting on to the point specifically about pensions in the UK. This has to be framed within the current state of the existing system itself and the numbers that we actually already know. And the reality shows that we're already in a crisis. It was only, 3 years ago with Truss's budget, which I actually thought was quite common sense and reasonable. Well, the pension market nearly broke after that. God knows where we're going to be when they release this one. But just so your audience understand how dire the situation is when it comes to somebody looking to retire in the UK now, you need to look at what's actually defined or what's regarded by the government and the think tanks as a reasonable retirement and whether everyone's going to actually receive it in the first place. So according to the estimates from the Pensions and Lifetime Savings Association, for a single person, a low income retirement is around 13,000 a year. A moderate one is 32,000 a year. And a comfortable lifestyle would require roughly £44,000 a year. And they roughly double that if you're living with somebody else. But this is really where it gets shocking. A survey conducted by Standard Life found 20% of people, this is about a month ago, 20% of people had no idea what their future income would be when they were questioned about their retirement. They hadn't even contemplated it. 20% of the population not even thinking about this. That's 6 million people completely in the dark. They don't even know whether they're going to be able to pay the bills in their retirement. They're just living for the here and now. And I think actually that's quite a conservative estimate, Godfrey, with some people that we speak to. They haven't even contemplated it and they've got significant sums of money. But just going back to the figures very quickly, I don't want to bore the audience to death, but 15% of respondents expected their income in retirement to be less than the minimum needed, so less than 13 grand. And that's simply to get by. That's 15% of the population. That's 5 million people we can discount again. They can't even reach the baseline, a decent level of life just to afford to live. And this is another worrying one, Godfrey. 40% of people, so 12 million people in the UK, who are referred to in the industry as undersavers, think they'll have enough in their pension pots once they retire, but when they do the maths, they realize they're going to be far, far short. It's what they call technically uncalibrated expectations. So basically, they believe they're going to be prepared, but in reality, they're most certainly not. So the final statistic, actually, before we move on, what came out of that, and again, very, very alarming, only 14% of people in the UK, and that's roughly 1 in 7, are on track today with their retirement planning, with a genuine chance of living comfortably and getting £44,000 a year out of their retirement as it stands. The rest are either terribly unprepared, overestimating what they're going to have, or they're destined to face a future life of hardship and state handouts, basically. All of this before Reeves puts these adjustments within the budget. It's like having a bonfire and just throwing kerosene on top of it. Shocking.
It was interesting. It was ever thus. Having been so long in the pensions industry, it's fascinating how difficult it is to get people to think about income in retirement. Very difficult to get them to think about this. Mm-hmm. I know, because I've been associated at every sort of level, junior level, middle level, senior management level, so on and so forth. And of course now it's me. I'm not a pensioner. I'm still working. But I mean, pensions are an interesting factor from a first-hand experience point of view. And the reason that was tax relief and a tax-free lump sum and so on and so forth over the years was to encourage people to save for retirement, which has to be good for society in general. And of course, we know that Kenneth Clarke, in his budget speech when he was Chancellor, he said, I'm not going to touch the tax-free, the much-loved but anomalous tax-free sum, because he was also a socialist. And he wanted to take as much money so he could spend. And in the same speech, I think it was, you have to spend to save. I think you'll be too young to remember that probably, but spend to save. And this is the problem with the whole thing. You cannot persuade, and incidentally, I was no different when I was in my 20s and early 30s. Pensions didn't mean anything to me. I was playing rugby, drinking beer, pulling crumpet, not as much crumpet as I would have liked, I have to tell you. But, you don't really think, and you also think you're immortal. When it comes to life assurance, well, you're going to live forever. And I know that all young men think like that, because my father was a fighter pilot in the war. And he used to say, well, when you're 19 or 20, as indeed he was in those days, flying a Spitfire, he used to say, well, you think you're going to live, if you actually sat down and thought about the casualties on bomber command and fighter command at that time of the war, you wouldn't take off. You'd run away. But we have to pretend that these things don't happen. Of course, they only bite people in the bum when people are in their late 50s, believe it or not. And this is admittedly anecdotal, their late 50s. And inheritance tax, people still phone me up or email me to see what they can do, and they're nearly 80. Not much you can do. Even under the current regime, you need 7 years to let it flush out. So these are the problems.
Oh, that's potentially going up to 10 as well, Godfrey.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Come to that on a minute, perhaps. But here we have this fascinating system where people don't actually think ahead. The only people who think ahead are those in the public sector, which is why they've been left alone if this legislation takes place, if this reform in tax comes, because that civil servants and teachers all retire relatively early, retire certainly in their 50s, which is almost impossible for most people who aren't in the public sector, on index-linked pensions. So it goes up, by inflation every year. So your people in the public sector never consider what pensions is or what they should be, because they know that they are immune or think they're immune. They think they're immune. And they don't talk about it, and they don't. And if you talk to them about it, they get their knickers in a bit of a twist and say, "Oh, Godfrey, I put £300 a month in," and no idea how much an index-linked pension of £45,000 a year costs. And these are the sort of problems that we have. But of course, they all vote Labour. I mean, if you were in the public sector, you would vote Labour. If I was in the public sector, I would vote Labour, because it's freebie time. It's a free lunch. Everything's free, free, free. But of course, as we know, there's no free lunches. There's no free lunches. Somebody has to pick up the tab sooner or later. And there's another dimension where you say it's got a political implication, which of course it has. And that is that they are all World Economic Forum people. They are all Fabians at university, practicing members of the Fabian Society. They do not want the private sector to succeed. They hate the private sector. And I did a lot of people might have seen it, my little thing entitled a video I did, They Hate Us. They hate us because they're sociopaths and they're dysfunctional. So we must get away from this idea that they're stupid, they don't understand what they're doing, or they don't understand pension, they don't understand the implications of taxation. No, no, it's quite deliberate, and no opposition political parties at the moment are actually beginning to believing the fact that this is deliberate. They think they're incompetent or they're stupid or they're economically illiterate. They're not. Now, what people watching this clip need to do is to let that sink in. Let that sink in. They hate your guts and they want to steal all the money that you've got.
Yeah.
And if you make it, I've made this analogy before, if it's in a bank or if it's in a pension fund, it's like leaving an expensive camera on the back seat of your car on a bank holiday on the front at Brighton. It'll get nicked, everybody, or overnight, it'll get nicked. If this government can see it, they will steal it, because tax is a form of theft. And the last lot were no better. And all the people waiting in the wings thinking they're going to get elected next time round are also no better if you have a close look at what they actually say and how they vote when it comes to welfare reform. Very interesting. But moving on that kind of thing. All politicians are sociopaths and want to steal your money. You must start planning your family's finances from that point of view. And once you do that, you can actually move on target. Now, of course, being a traditional pension fund manager for 40 years plus, and incidentally, if I may blow my own trumpet, I won international prizes for the funds I ran, not very fashionable because they weren't equities, they were fixed interest, but leaving that aside, so I wasn't the darling of the crumpet on the second floor at Mercury, I have to say, because it was boring fixed interest. Leaving that aside, what do you want a pension to do? Your pension has to keep pace with inflation. That's a major thing. That's the whole point of investment. Any kind of investment has to keep pace with inflation because you're saving it in your 30s and your 40s and your 50s, and you don't want to be murdered by inflation when you get into your 70s and your 80s now because people are living longer. So this is what people need to be thinking about. What am I going to do with it? The tax advantages now are going to be scraped away, and they've been nibbled at. They've been nibbled at since Gordon Brown actually taxed at 10% the dividend income, which used to make up pension payments. A lot of people don't know that your equity portfolio and your bond portfolio, your pensions were paid by the income to that fund. They didn't sell bits of capital in order to pay you. It was income. It had to be income in those days. Now, all that's been swept aside. So what you have to do if you're watching this clip and you're worried about your pension, thinking about your pension, or indeed, even if you're getting close to drawing your pension, you need to think about what you are going to do with it and what history tells you if you want to avoid inflation, which of course I reintroduce again is Nick, who can give us some ideas on these problems.
I totally concur with that, Godfrey. It's how can you protect it? There's no accountability at the moment at all in government. And this is a crisis. We cannot ignore it. And you're absolutely right. There's almost no public education about how to invest properly or what people really need to keep ahead of inflation. People haven't got the tools. There's no clear picture. It's a very opaque industry, and they deliberately keep it that way for obvious reasons. So they maintain control and they can charge their fees. But people have no real idea as to how unprepared they are when this collapses. And look, this is a demographic crisis. This is a structural crisis. Too many older people, no younger people coming through, taxed to death, regulated to death. What's going to happen? And that's forgetting any stock market kind of crash that we see in the wider market as well, Godfrey. You've got to consider that. Stocks at record levels. When's that bubble going to burst? Who knows? They might be able to kick the can down the road with that one a long time from now. But everyone in this country expects a comfortable future. But for most, that is not going to happen. They're going to have severe cuts to their quality of life. A lot of people are going to fall into poverty when they retire. And I don't think that's a future anyone should accept. So just putting that planning in place now and having that awareness is going to enable you to kind of get on that life raft, I suppose. And all you've got to do is look at the government's reaction too at the moment. Instead of tackling these long-term issues head on, they're pushing policies that just continue to drain your savings. They're also consolidating big pension schemes into larger funds, which are supposedly meant to provide better returns. But like we said a few weeks ago on our previous podcast, Godfrey, the Mansion House Accords are forcing them to put the pension companies to put huge swathes of capital into private investments where there's no transparency, extremely high costs, no liquidity. And what that's going to be doing is going into UK PLC and basically bailing out the government for them. They see your pension pots as a piggy bank. Really, really worrying. Again, these have much higher fees for the pension companies, 1%, 1.5%, whatever it might be. But just to put that into perspective on a numbers basis as well, let's say you've got £100,000 pension there, and there's a 1% fee on it. And it grows on average, let's say 5%, if we want to look at a lot of the benchmarks. Annually, that's going to result in about a £1,050 fee for the year, which reduces your growth to about 3.9% instead of the 5%. Bearing in mind, inflation is actually about 18%. So you're constantly losing place. So over many years, these small annual fees add up in these type of government-backed schemes. And on larger pension pots, it's a significant amount of capital because, of course, it compounds, not only on the initial capital, but on the interest that you've earned as well. And if you run the numbers, that amounts to about a fifth, 20% of your gains gone in fees with these type of schemes that the government want to force everyone into. I just think it's absolutely outrageous. This isn't free market capitalism. This is just the government dictating and strong-arming pension companies into doing it and saying, listen, obey or else. And then, of course, look, if people finally manage to have something left at the end of their retirement, well, they're planning an inheritance tax on it too. I know you touched upon it briefly again earlier. A lot of people are talking to you about inheritance tax, Godfrey, but that means that grieving families are going to be responsible for paying out on any unused pots, if there's any left, of course, that is, with a marginal rate of tax of up to 67% if the original holder dies after 75. Again, a double death tax, really, if that's what I'd call it. Please make it make sense. No one has ever taxed their way to prosperity. You look at the Laffer curve. You cannot carry on taxing until people just say, you know what, enough's enough. I'm not going to bother. So it's going to result in a systemic failure. Wages are stagnating. Savings rates are hitting historic lows, and they're thinking of adjusting people's cash ISAs down now as well, even from the 20 grand. I don't know what rate that's going to be, but I don't know whether it's set in stone as well. But they've been wanting to do that for a couple of years. Our state pension, so the meager kind of 11 or 12 grand that you may get from the state if you get that far, that's costing 5% of our GDP at the moment. And that's projected to increase to about 7%. So the numbers just do not add up. There is nothing left there. So millions and millions of people, going back to those initial numbers, Godfrey, are going to be living in poverty. They're going to be forced to downsize, rely on the state, universal basic income, accept a lower quality of life because the system is just being hollowed out from within. The government are deliberately, from what it seems, hollowing it out. And what's really frightening is the longer that we delay what's going on, the worse the situation just gets. We just keep stacking that pyre. It's been brewing for decades. So you know the history of it, Godfrey. But the UK's pension system was built on a foundation of extremely generous public sector schemes and a very small private sector. But that's all gone. The private sector's obviously grown, but now the government seems to think like it's this £3 billion piggy bank that they can just dip in and out of in order to bail them out because they can't get money anywhere else. So the entire system, it's fundamentally broken. Public sector pensions are over generous, paid for by taxpayers. Private sector workers are being pushed to the brink with little understanding or control over what they even have in their pension and how they can get themselves protected against what's coming. Because you can be sure as damn it, it's not going to be the bond market. Equities, you might have some success with that in the short term, but when that collapses, what you see a 1929 style crash and it doesn't recover for years, not very good if you've got your retirement, and you want to retire at 65 or whatever it is. But one final statistic I'll leave with you there: by 2035, the state pension, so only 2035, this is 10 years away, will not only outgrow national insurance contributions, it's going to outstrip the government's budget. So we've got a very maximum of 10 years left until this comes crashing down. Whether we have that long, I certainly don't think we do, but it's going to implode. There's going to be a default. You think paying 100 billion on debt interest at the moment is bad. It's going to look inconsequential in comparison to this pension crisis that's coming up. And eventually, I know I've said this before, but at that point, the UK is going to become a giant care home sustained by tax farming. That is it. All the entrepreneurs are going to leave. Of course, Rachel Reeves is talking about exit tax as well. If you know the system's doomed and you think, I don't want to be part of this, I don't want all my wealth gone, I'm going to head for the hills and go somewhere else. No, sorry. Unrealized capital gains at 20%. You're not getting away that fast. You cannot make it up. This digital prison is coming down on us all quicker than we can even think. And it's happening in the pension market because everyone has antipathy towards pensions. Yes, they're very boring. They're not very sexy. But I just want to encourage people to think, what is in my pension? How is it being managed? How can I protect myself against this structural collapse or a stock market crash or whatever it might be? But of course,
only 40 years ago, Great Britain had the strongest private pension sector in the world.
Yep.
Joint first we were with Holland, because we had the same kind of pension arrangements. They were funded defined benefit schemes, funded. And of course, the thing about public sector pensions, they're just taken away from the wealth creating sector. And there aren't enough people in the wealth creating sector to fund it any longer.
Exactly.
You can only go so far. And you're quite right when you talk about the Laffer curve and you talk about trying to tax your way into wealth. And of course, I don't often quote Winston Churchill, but of course he got it absolutely right when he said, trying to tax your way into prosperity is like trying to lift yourself up in a bucket by the handle. And that was from Winston Churchill, who didn't know anything about economics at all. In fact, he was virtually economically illiterate, but even he could spot that that wasn't the way. So before I come on to just a couple of things I wanted to run past you while I've got you, and people, I'm getting a lot of traffic, people coming in saying that was good. Can you mention one or two other things? I know we'll have another session at some stage, probably just post budget or something probably, but I just wanted to run something past you, which is just coming up now. You'll be aware of it, I'm almost sure. BlackRock is the biggest investment house on the face of the planet. They bought Mercury Asset Management. They bought my old company I used to work for. No, they didn't. Merrill Lynch bought them, and BlackRock bought Merrill Lynch. So they're monster. And it's headed by a man called Larry Fink, who buzzes in and out of number 10 Downing Street and is always there to be found at Davos, who's a big mate of the Muppets who run our country. He probably tells them what to do. When you're the richest man in or the biggest institution in the world, that's probably what's going to happen. Now, just going back to the COVID scam, the great COVID scam, where interest rates went to virtually zero in order to facilitate getting us past that short-term, everything short-term, that short-term nonsense, but I won't go down that route. But we're in a situation where, of course, all the big banks, all the big investment houses bought futures and derivatives. Now, a lot of those derivatives were based on or underwritten by commercial property. Now, commercial property as an investment sector now is a complete and total disaster, because people have got used to working a couple of days a week at the office and a couple of days at home. So we have acres and acres of very highly expensive real estate in the commercial sector. This is true of North America, it's true of England as well. We all know this. Even people who don't take a big interest know this. Now, the derivatives were bought on the expectation of low interest rates for a long time, which of course is nonsense because they can't. But in the city, the people who run derivatives are mainly children. And so they've never seen a bear market. They've never seen collapses. So these people have barely started shaving. Indeed, you've barely started shaving by the people living outside. So BlackRock are now linked into these derivatives, and we're beginning to see the first few go down. It's 100 million here, there, and 100 million there. And of course, to BlackRock, that's not a big deal, who run $1 trillion. So it's not a big deal. But I would use the analogy here, if I may. If you look at the great Hoover Dam, the Van Cooley Dam, or whatever, any great big dam in the world, the Assam Dam, if you like, it doesn't really matter. If you look at that and you see a tiny crack, it may be only spilling out a few gallons an hour, but you're in the shit. Because it's not going to stay a few gallons an hour. It'll trigger here and it'll trigger there. And then you've got your knock-on effect. And you are dealing with quadrillions of derivatives globally. And this is how it brought Lehman Brothers down. And we've all forgotten about that now because it's very convenient. So all these children in the city don't understand. They get the bonuses and they don't care because they'll be gone when the collapse comes. Now, I've looked at the numbers with BlackRock. And I think it's just like a tiny hole in the front of the Titanic. The ship has X hours to live. Well, if you're in the cocktail bar on the Titanic enjoying yourself, the hole's in the other end of the ship. You don't think it applies to you. And people watching this clip, many of whom are my subscribers, are actually pretty wick, as we say up in Yorkshire. They're pretty wick. They know how many beans make 5. But when BlackRock starts to get into trouble, the whole world, or certainly the Western world, will virtually collapse. I see these coming. As my wife always says, the trouble is you're always right, which is why you've got no mates. Because nobody likes a smart ass, do they? And I'm a bit of a smart ass. You're a young smart ass because you're usually right too.
I don't know about that,
so what I'd like you to do for my subscribers is, I mean, everybody knows I'm a gold bug now. I wasn't. I was an equities bug in the 90s, in the 80s and 90s. But now I'm a gold bug, and I've been a gold bug for a long period, and that's fine. And I put my hands up to it. But the practical thing, the doing thing, as we used to say at Ashridge Management College, is, okay, everybody finishes watching this. What can they do? Certainly my advice is to take it off the table in some way, because if they can see it, they'll steal it. I want to talk just very briefly about custody. Where would it go? Where should it go if they buy precious metal? In what form should it be? I know we've covered it before, but I'm getting new people watching all the time. Take it away.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it is to an extent, because that was all the trend 10 years ago, and those chickens are going to come home to roost in the derivatives. It's going to be like credit T-volt swaps in 2008, when obviously the housing market came collapsing down. Of course, back then, gold went up 300% in about 4.5 years. So it makes this latest rally this year of 50% like a walk in the park. So it's nothing yet. A lot of people are saying to me, am I too late? Has that ship sailed? No, it certainly hasn't. This really is the beginning. So yes, we need to rethink how we save, how we invest, and how we support ourselves in later years. And of course, all your family and friends as well, because when everything collapses, you're going to need to help them too. So you need to take control of your future and not leave it to politicians who have frankly shown no interest and, yes, like you said earlier, pure contempt for us. They actively hate us. So the message is really consider getting some gold. In times of crisis like this, it's the only thing that's going to keep ahead of inflation. People think that getting a 5, an 8, a 10% yield is going to help you. It's not. You can open up a SIP, a pension, put physical gold bars into it in storage, fully allocated and fully segregated, and at least you have something physical that can't be touched by the pension companies and played around with and leveraged out multiple times over. 90% of people I speak to, Godfrey, have no idea what's in their pension. And it's all these voodoo economics and trickery that goes on. Why? They're paying huge fees for it anyway. If you just buy gold, you leave it there, it does nothing. You sit back, you relax. When everything comes crashing down, you know that you can sleep better at night and you're safe. You don't even need to be paying these astronomical fees just to keep the pension companies and the government afloat. So yes, set up a vault with your pension. Get some physical in there. Don't put it into ETFs. A lot of people that I speak to, particularly larger clients, have got ETFs and they think that they've got gold exposure. No, those are just paper contracts. Those are paper proxies. They are not the real deal. When the system collapses, they will not be worth the paper they're written on, and you'll just be cash settled into a rapidly hyperinflating currency. You need something physical, something that actually exists, and something that's analog. Because given what's coming, there's not going to be much left on the table. And what are all the central banks doing? They are buying more than we have ever seen over the last 50 years. They know exactly what is coming. They're trying to dump bonds like they're going out of fashion, and they're buying the physical metal. So just follow what the smart money are doing. They are very private about this. It's like ships in the night. They never tell you exactly where that gold's going. It moves around throughout the world, and nobody knows where it goes. And there's a reason for that. They have to be secret about it, because if they know, they openly laugh about this, actually, Godfrey, the central bankers. There's been footage that's been released of them laughing, thinking, God, if the public only knew to buy gold, why do they have so much trust in the markets? Conventional markets are bad. The pension market is terrifying. So you have to have, in my opinion, something physical, just to act as that hedge, as that foundation, as that safety net, because when everything else comes crashing down, that's when gold comes into its element and it starts to rise quite dramatically.
Let me just add something there, because I've seen a few clips lately from some dealers, and I don't like ever having a pop at anybody. I'm certainly not going to name any names. But there was one I just saw this morning, and it's a name that had come to me before from a client who eventually had the good sense to come to you. But he was advocating, it was only this morning I saw it, or was it yesterday morning, advocating. He was saying, "Oh, I've got, I've got Krugerrands, and I've got this, and
Yeah.
I've got that," and talking his book. Now, it seemed to me, certainly, if you're a Brit, let's forget about everybody else for the time being. You don't want another country's coinage, or you don't want bullion, unless it's in your pension fund, which has to be bullion.
Yep.
You've got to have coins of some description, because it's coin of the realm. It's very difficult for the government to steal something which is designated coin of the realm and is also capital gains tax free, and has all those advantages. And international, I learned something from you the other day. Well, I sort of vaguely knew about it, but I didn't know it as much as you knew about it. And that was the esteem, for want of a better word, that the actual humble sovereign was held. And there are other things for the Brit to go to. There's half sovereigns, and there's Britannias, and so on and so on. But I'm not going to go down your field. That's your field. But it's interesting that things like the sovereign have an international market. And so if it's all terrible and disastrous and everything goes badly wrong, that there will be Saudis, there will be Middle Eastern potentates, there will be indeed even central banks, maybe, who will buy sovereigns because of their historical provenance. A word about that, if you will, Nick, and also just another short word about custody and safekeeping, and the implications of Switzerland and the implications of capital controls on that particular system. Can you just outline a bit of that?
Yeah, you will get some people trying to flog you this coin, this commemorative, whatever. Just ignore that completely. It's not in your best interest. It's in theirs. So just go for UK legal tender coins. Forget everything else every single time. Now, yes, sovereigns, the chief coin of the world, huge secondary market, internationally traded, wherever you may decide to go. If, of course, you do want to escape to the exits, of course, that you can internationally trade them. Doesn't really matter where you are in the world. Now, in terms of custody, I have a lot of clients at the moment putting it into Zurich in Switzerland, in our vault there, instead of in London, because they do not trust these wealth grabs that might be coming. They want to get it offshore. If they do decide to leave the country, it's already out. I'm not sure whether they're going to introduce capital controls with immediate effect, Godfrey. If I was the government and I was that way inclined and I was of their political persuasion, then yes, I'd probably do it immediately, as soon as the budget's released at 6 o'clock, whenever that is. But you've got a plan now. You've got a couple of weeks left. I would say the amount of people that are putting their gold into Switzerland now has gone up by over 300% in like the last quarter, purely because people do not feel comfortable leaving their assets in the UK. There is capital flight. So look, you have to keep, well, you can keep it in London, keep it in Zurich, pensions in London, of course, and only bullion bars in the UK for people's pensions. You can't put coins in there. But if you have spare money, sat in savings accounts or ISAs, doing nothing, losing place to inflation, you don't know where to put it, they're going to bring down the ISA limits, then yes, absolutely get some sovereigns. And again, you can keep those stored with us, or we can just deliver them directly to your front door, and you can just keep them for safekeeping.
I think we've gone far as we want to go. And I think if you'll be so kind to come back on closer to the budget, or maybe post-budget.
Oh, absolutely. I'm sure there's going to be so much more to talk about.
There might be a window. It may be, perhaps it could be April 1926 before some 2026 before some of these things happen, because it's got to be brought in. It's got to, the paperwork has to be done. So there could be an opportunity for December, January, February, and March to actually rescue a situation if certain circumstances can be rescued. So if we have a chat then and talk about whatever is flavour of the month, you know, we can have a word and see if we can help people avoid what is theft. In the same way, and I make this point again, do excuse me for making it yet again, you simply wouldn't go on a fortnight's holiday and leave your front door open. And you know, you wouldn't walk away leaving your house open. Don't put it in the shop window. You've got to. There's only one way of handling it, you and your family's money, what money you have from theft from the government, and that is you have to take it away. You have to take it out of their sight. If they can't see it, they can't steal it. And for those of you who email me, and I do feel sorry for you, people say, it's all right for you, Godfrey. I don't have any money, I'm skint. Well, you know, they can't nick it, can they? If you haven't got anything, you can't nick it. But most of the people, most of my subscribers who watch me, not all, sadly, but most, have had relatively successful professional lives, and they've got a bit put by, and they've done reasonably well. Ordinary Middle England professionals who have grandchildren, so on and so forth. Don't leave it till the last minute. Don't send me an email and say, what can I do? I'm 80, like the last bloke, bless his cotton socks. You know, if you're comfortable, get rid of a little bit now. As I say, you can put an awful lot in the tea caddy. An awful lot in the tea caddy.
It's planning ahead, Godfrey. The government are playing this game of 3D chess with you. They're already trying to ensnare you. You've got to break out, get on that life raft, take some independence back, and actually own your own wealth, because they want every single penny of it. Everything. They think that everything you own belongs to the state, and you simply, throughout your life, have the luxury of renting it from them. That is the mentality of these people. Psychopathic.
Thanks again, Nick. Thanks for your time.
Cheers,
and I look
Godfrey.
forward, and so will my subscribers, for chatting with you again. Thank you so much for your time.
Always a pleasure. Take care. See ya.
As most of you know, my work is very heavily independently research based, and I get my information from all over the world. It would help if you press the subscribe button and the little bell next to it, because the more subscribers I have, the more likely it is that international independent research institutes will share their material with me. It's most helpful, and then of course I automatically share it with you. So surprise, won't cost you anything. Thank you very much.